The time is 7 o'clock, and I'll call to order the City Council meeting for May 22nd, 2017. Elena, if you'll call roll, please.
Mr. Jones?
Here.
Mrs. Keller? Here. Mr. Rohr? Mr. Hellinger?
Here.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Here.
Mayor Riggle?
Here. Next, we'll have the swearing in of our newest member, Jim Browning, third ward appointee. Please.
You may have noticed he didn't get called in the original ballot because he wasn't a member yet, but now he needs it. So, all right, raise your right hand. Ready? Repeat after me. I, Jim Browning. I, Jim Browning. Solemnly swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution. That I will support the Constitution of the United States and of the State of Ohio. Of the United States and the State of Ohio. And that I will in all respects obey. And I will in all respects obey and comply with the provisions of the Charter and ordinances of the City of Delaware. With the provisions and charter and ordinances of the City of Delaware. Ordinances of the City of Delaware. Keep it really long. And I will faithfully discharge the duties of my office. And I will faithfully discharge the duties of my office. Congratulations, you're official.
Welcome. Thank you. Number 3 on the agenda is the invocation, which will be given by Maj Shavanta and followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. If you will please come to the microphone and give us the name of your temple, and if you'll all please rise.
Good evening. My name is Ma Shivananda. I am the Mahant of Nityanandeshwara Hindu Temple, the spiritual head of the temple, and I'm glad to be here. So everybody stand straight and close your eyes and connect with your consciousness. I represent Sanatana Hindu Dharma, which represents connecting with your individual consciousness to the universal consciousness, with oneness with all and inclusive of all. So that's what it represents, and let us connect with ourselves and connect with everybody here. Nityanandam Paramasugatam Kevalam Jnanamurtim Dvandvatitam Gahana Sadusham Tattvamashyadilaksham Yekam Nityam Vimalamachalam Sarvadi Sakshibhu Avatitam Trigunarahidam Sadgurum Tam Namami Nityanandeshwara Samarambam Nityanandeshwari Madhyamam Nityananda Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Lalate Tripundri Nitilakrita Kasturi Tilakaha Spuranmala Taras Purita Karikaupina Vasanaha Dadano Dustaram Sirashi Panirajam Sashikalam Pradipas Sarvesham Arunagiri Yogi Vijayate. Nityanandam.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 5 on the agenda is the approval of motion summary. Elaine, if you'll please read this into the record.
Approval of the motion summary of the regular meeting of council held on May 8th, 2017 as recorded and transcribed, and approval of the motion summary of the special meeting of council held on May 15th, 2017 as recorded and transcribed.
What is the wish of council?
Move for approval of motion summaries.
I have a motion by Mr. Schaefer, a second by Mr. Kyle. Roll call, please. I didn't say that, I read that, did I? Mr. Schaefer, Mr. Rohr. I don't know where that came from.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller? Yes. Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes. Before we start, I had 3 hours of sleep, so bear with me, okay? If you'll please read item 6, the consent agenda.
Item A, resolution number 17-31, a resolution authorizing the city manager to submit a grant application to the Federal Aviation Administration and the Ohio Department of Transportation and to enter into required agreements for the resurfacing of Taxiway A.
What is the wish of council on the consent agenda?
I move for approval.
Second.
I have a motion by Mrs. Keller, a second by Mr. Schaefer. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr? Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes, motion carries. Item 7 is time set aside for letters, petitions, or any public comments for anything that is not on tonight's agenda. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to come forward at this time? If you'll please come forward to the microphone. And for the record, you'll have to give us your name and address, as you know.
Good evening. Susie Bibler, Executive Director of Main Street Delaware, 20 East Winter Street. Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to come tonight to tell you Main Street Delaware annually gives out Design Award Committee. Our Design Award Committee gives out design awards every year. And this year, I wanted to come and let you know that the City of Delaware has won an award. It has been voted on by our design committee, and it is the work of the Parks and Rec Department, Ted Miller, who said he can't do his work without all of you. So I'm happy to come to you tonight to let you know that we would like to award the city with the best, Downtown Ambiance Award. We recognize the time and effort and finances that you put into making our downtown look the way it does today with the flower pots and the agreement that we have with all of you, and then also the tree lights just have really added a great thing to our downtown. With that, I have an invite, and we actually have the award ceremony on June 29th. It's a Thursday evening at the Ross Art Museum, and would love to have you all attend. But I have the invite, and I can either give it to one of you or to Ted, who's here
Why
tonight.
don't you give it to Elaine, and then she can
Okay.
share with all of us.
Great.
Thank you so
Yes,
much.
thank you.
What an honor. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to come forward at this time? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to item 9, which is the third reading of ordinance number 17-29. Oh, I guess we should do 8. Committee reports. Hold that thought, Elaine. Mr. Jones.
I've had no committees lately, so I have nothing.
Mrs. Keller? No committees? No, yet. Mr. Moore, I said yet.
APC is meeting Wednesday.
Wednesday.
A couple of my fellow members are a couple days early. So good to report next week.
Okay, thank you.
Nothing
to report. Mr.
Nothing,
Shaker?
thank you.
Okay. And don't worry, I'll get you some committees.
I understand.
Okay, we'll move on to item 9. Now for the third reading of ordinance 17-29.
Ordinance number 17-29, an ordinance repealing and replacing section 929 of the City of Delaware Streets, Utilities, and Public Services Code, establishing general rules and regulations for the collection of refuse.
Okay, this is the third reading. Bill is here if anybody has any further. Dion, did you have something you want to say?
No, I was just going to mention that Bill and I went over it last time, and we could try to answer any questions you have, but I don't think we need another presentation unless council would like it.
Any questions for Bill or Darren? Any wishes of council on ordinance 17-29? You don't like pulling teeth here, people.
I'll move to approve ordinance 17-29.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Schaefer, second by Mr. Hellinger. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes, motion carries. And I guess it's one more. Yes. Item 10 is the second reading of ordinance 17-31. Elena, if you'll please read this in the record.
Ordinance number 17-31, an ordinance amending the 2017 appropriations ordinance to provide funding for completing a multi-use trail extension on the Springfield Branch Trail and declaring an emergency. Emergency clause, that this ordinance is hereby declared to be an emergency measure necessary to provide for the public peace, safety, health, and welfare of the city, and for the further reason to provide timely construction of the new trail extension, and as such will be in full force and be in effect immediately upon its passage.
Okay, we heard from Ted last meeting on this. Does anybody have any other questions for Ted or?
This allows us to complete that one gap we have at the end of the Springfield Branch Trail, connecting it with an on-street network, and it's overdue, and look forward to, hopefully, if council considers an action on this tonight, we can get going with it yet this year and get it completed.
Madam Mayor, I move to suspend the rules on 1731.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Jones, second by Mrs. Keller. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
Madam Mayor, I move the approval of the emergency clause on ordinance 1731.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Jones, second by Mrs. Keller. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Riggle?
Yes.
Madam Mayor, I move the adoption of ordinance 1731.
Is there a
Second, sorry.
Motion by Mr. Jones, second by Mrs. Keller. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes, motion carries. Okay, let's jump down to item 16, consideration of resolution 17-32. Just to keep you all on your toes.
You said resolution 1732, correct?
Yep.
Resolution number 17-32, a resolution authorizing the city manager to apply for and accept overtime reimbursement through the FFY 2018 Selective Traffic Enforcement Program and the Impaired Driving Enforcement Program Grant.
Thank you. Good evening, Chief Buzinowski.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council. This is for consideration, is this ordinance to allow the city manager to apply and accept a grant for the Selective Traffic Enforcement Program, which targets speed, aggressive driving, other things that relate to our fatal crashes, as well as impaired driving, the Impaired Driving Enforcement Program targeting DUI and reduction of DUI crashes. We qualify for this program this year due to our number of fatalities that we've had in average over the past 3 years. We've averaged 2 a year for the past 3 years, but in reality it's 3 last year, 3 in 2015, and our crash numbers have tended to go up. So this will allow us to seek reimbursement for 280 hours for the Selective Traffic Enforcement Program and 420 hours for the Impaired Driving Enforcement Program.
Good. Any questions for Chief? What is the wish of council?
Motion to approve resolution 17-32.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Rohr, second by Mr. Schaefer. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes, motion carries. Thank
Thank
you. Before you leave, can you give us an update on your meeting the other night, Tuesday night? Was it well attended?
It wasn't as well attended as we would have liked, but we were late in getting the word out because we were trying to work with Maryhaven to get some Narcan training, and they were not able to commit. And then at the last minute, the health department jumped in and helped us out and did a great job. So we had probably about a dozen people there. So those folks got some drug awareness training and the Narcan training and a free kit. So look to actually, Maryhaven is very interested in working with us, and probably in the future we'll set up another date where we'll be able to get advanced word out to get people in to get trained.
I wish we didn't have to, but it's a necessity, I'm afraid. So, okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Didn't mean to put you on the spot. Okay, let's do item 17, which is consideration of resolution -33.
Resolution number 17-33, a resolution amending the 2017 through 2021 5-year capital improvement program.
Mr. Bowman?
Yeah, this is a continued action on a recommendation that was made to the Finance Committee last month in regards to making some modifications to our capital improvement program to recognize some grant funding that we received through the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission for the Point project, and it makes a number of other changes as well, one of which would be to begin the planning for a parking lot next to the Gazette building. We've talked about this before, the old former engineering building. We know it's in the Historic Preservation District. But we also know that we have a need for downtown surface level parking. So we plan to begin that conversation at the staff level with the HPC if council sees fit to ultimately approve this amendment and move ahead with a supplemental appropriation for that project. The details of the various changes are spelled out in a memo from the finance director, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. I should say that we will have a more in-depth discussion regarding the Morpsey project, which is the point, and the associated funding pieces for that, probably one of the upcoming meetings. We will be required to enter into a partnership agreement with Morpsey and ultimately with the State of Ohio Department of Transportation for that project. But the good news is that we were we received $25 million in funding through Morpsey for the Point project, and that's significant. And there's some other projects in there as well. So, Bill or Dean, do you want to elaborate at all on anything I've mentioned?
Not so much elaborate, but I did provide updated plan document. Again, that's just a capital plan. Won't be long. We'll be talking about the next 5-year capital plan. Some of the things that changed were just updates to estimates, and there were some small projects that were shifted from 1 year back or forward. But the primary change from a project standpoint were the ones identified in Tom's email, and then the follow-up to that. But if you have any questions, we may not get into much discussion tonight. Feel free to send me an email, answer any of your questions, or however you want to approach it.
Yeah. The funding was, the total project is about $25 million. The amount that we are getting is less than that. But,
I was going to say, that point, 25 million, I was getting excited here.
It is less. It's about $17,700,000 for the Point project, which is still significant. It is a multi-jurisdictional project. We do plan to reach out to other parties, in particular the county, to talk to them about participating, as that was identified as one of the large regional projects that have significance. So,
Would you remind us again what our match is? We talked about that.
the match on the Point is about 20%. In most cases for the Morpsey grant, and then we have 2 other streams of funding. We have a safety grant, and what was the other?
Track.
We have a track money as well. So 25% on the track funding and about 10% on the safety funding.
And this also includes the traffic signal improvement, correct?
Yes, signal improvements are included in this as well.
Any other questions? Okay, let's jump back up to item 11, which is a 7:20 public hearing. Elaine, if you'll please read this on the record.
Ordinance number 17-32. An ordinance approving an amendment to Chapter 1111 subdivision regulations of the Planning and Zoning Code pertaining to acceptance of public improvements and bonding.
Mr. Eklund?
Madam Mayor, members of council, these are a series of amendments being proposed in the subdivision chapter of the zoning code. Your planning commission did recommend unanimous approval at their May meeting of these changes. And they really came about as a series of meetings and discussions, primarily with the BIA, to bring forward areas of concern and more how can we improve the process, make it efficient, but still do all the things that we need to do. And that started last year and has been kind of an ongoing series of meetings, as you all are well aware. There are really two primary changes to the chapter, other than sort of reorganizing it so that it's in a better flow of the actual work process. And the two areas relate to, number one, acceptance of public improvements. As you know, you do that today, typically by resolution only, and it's on the consent agenda. And I don't think there's been one where we've actually had a conversation about the acceptance of public improvement when we get to that point. But it does take not just home builders, but other developers that are involved in that process, 2 to 3 weeks of additional time by the time staff has done their, most primarily engineering staff has done their inspections, collected the required bonds, and that sort of thing. So the proposed change here would simply make that a staff level function rather than having to go to city council. The other large change is that the current bonding section of the subdivision code definitely is not as clear as it could be. It doesn't spell out exactly what you can bond and when. The proposed changes spell that out very clearly. And some of these, the BIA might otherwise want these to be all bondable, but what we have here is a series of about 9 items that are eligible for bonding. So you build the subdivision, you build the infrastructure, and you get to a point where there are some things left to build, but they're not really things that should preclude the construction of homes or other developments in that case. And in this case, we're spelling those out. The one new thing that we haven't done by practice that would be bondable is the final wearing course of asphalt. And so that's a new element that could be bonded as well, that hasn't been allowed to be bonded by practice up to this point. But we think it makes it much clearer. Other than that, there were a lot of little cleanups in the chapter, but those are the two large items that we agreed on as staff, and we brought forward the Planning Commission now to you for consideration. So I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Questions for Dave? Nobody? Okay.
There, I just have a comment.
Sure.
I just want to say hats off to David and Matt and the others. There's been a lot of work on this and trying to find that balance that still protects us and works with our development community. So you guys have done a really good job of finally getting this to the point where I think all of us are happy with it. So,
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, at this time, we will open it up to the public for any public comments. If there's anyone in the audience who would like to come forward at this time, please raise your hand. I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. What was that? This is public comments.
Yeah, it's for a zoning code change, not the bike path plan.
Okay, we'll close the public hearing. What is the wish of council on this? Do you want to take it to another reading, or you want to vote on it tonight? Yeah.
I'll make a motion to suspend the rules requiring 3 readings on ordinance 17-33.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Schaefer, a second by Mr. Hollinger. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
No.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
I'll move for the approval of ordinance 17-32.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Schaefer,
Yeah.
second by Mr. Hellinger. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes. Motion carries. Let's move on to item 12. Which is Is the 7:25 the public hearing?
We can do
Yeah,
12,
she could
13,
read
and
them all,
14
but
together if you
It is
prefer.
7:25, so.
Ordinance number 17-33, an ordinance approving a street vacation of Stratford Drive from Coghlan's Crossing encompassing approximately 77.102 acres zoned A1 PMU, agricultural district with a planned mixed-use overlay district, and located 23 west of Stratford Road and north of Meeker Way. Ordinance number 17-34, an ordinance approving a final subdivision plat for Coghlan's Crossing encompassing approximately 77.102 acres zoned A1 PMU agricultural district with a planned mixed-use overlay district and located east of US 23, west of Stratford Road, and north of Meeker Way. And ordinance number 17-35, an ordinance approving a final development plan for Coghlan's Crossing Phase 1 infrastructure encompassing approximately 77.102 acres zoned A1 PMU agricultural district with a planned mixed-use overlay district and located east of US 23, west of Stratford Road, and north of Meeker Way.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson?
Madam Mayor, members of council, this is for the Coghlan's Crossing development. As you know, you just approved a large planned mixed-use overlay for this development. We have the applicants here this evening. See if I can get this to work here. There we go. Coghlan's Crossing is 80 acres, approximately due north of Meeker Way, and as part of some land that we just annexed to the city as well. One of the first cases you have is the vacation of a road. I want to just show you the aerial. And you can see in the upper left corner of the red subject area, is a small cul-de-sac and subdivision that was in the county, now it's in the city. That road would be vacated, and that's the first, technically needs to be vacated. That's technically your first case in support of the proposed spine road, which if you approve the rest of the cases tonight, will plat the lots as well as the public right-of-way for this road. So there are 8 lots proposed in this subdivision, 4 reserve areas. You can see them on the diagram. You can also see the old cul-de-sac lot in the spine road outlined in black as well here for you. We just tried to color up their exhibits a little bit and try to help you out, orient you. But the proposed subdivision plat, final subdivision plat, is in conformance, complete conformance with the preliminary plat that you just approved a couple of months ago. The other element, other case for you tonight is first final development plan. We're sort of capturing this as infrastructure. This is a little bit different in terms of process for us. Most applicants come forward with all the infrastructure and a first building, particularly in commercial or mixed use or even housing. A first house or a first commercial structure. In this case, the applicant wants to essentially get all the lots platted and get the infrastructure in, then be able to market the property and come forward with future development plans for that actual construction on a lot-by-lot basis. Our process can accommodate this. It's just unusual for us. We don't see that all the time. Most of the time, people want to have a tenant in the hand, but we'll continue with the unusualness of this development as well. And it's unusual, but it's good. The applicant is here today. This plan is in complete conformance with the preliminary documents and the zoning text that you just approved as well. Your planning commission did recommend unanimous approval, and staff recommends approval. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. I'm happy to go through this detail, but I'm sure you read it in your pack.
Any questions for Dave? At this time, we'll open it to the public, since this is a public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to come forward this time with any questions or public comments?
Janine Murphy, 1960 Stratford Road. I just have a question. Where's the sewer planning on going?
So the sanitation related to the sewer along Stratford Road, and that it be extended to their property boundaries as the applicant. And I guess that would be your property boundary as well. So it's that north property
Is it going along Stratford or is it going
It's
along
going-
the Spine Road?
Well, it's going throughout the site, but I think the one that I'm guessing you're probably most interested in is the one along Stratford, which would have to stub to their northern property line along Stratford Road.
Okay, so that's north on the Ron James property, right?
It's north on
The north edge of Ron
it's
James.
North on the Ron James.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. And then I just have one comment. As of at least, I think it was yesterday, Mike James' house on Hull Drive, the grass is like this high. It looks totally abandoned. Well, excuse me, Wagner Way, sorry. The house that you bought, I mean, you're mowing Ron's and that's nice, but if I were one of those people up there, I would be really upset. And it looks bad, really bad. So if you could have it mowed or something, nice. That's all, thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Susan McGrail, 268 Sylvan and 151 Pennock Avenue. Just had a question regarding utilities. Will these be buried or will they be above ground,
All the utilities are required to be below ground.
below ground? And then if they are below ground, will they have those little stations in front of the house that are kind of like the metal squares that are like that development behind the new Kroger's out by Houck in that area? If you go into the development,
Transformer boxes.
yeah, they're in the front yard where the kids can get into them
They're
and,
not always placed there, but
yeah.
They'll
I mean,
have to
is
be-
there an issue of where the transformer boxes will be placed? Because I remember when we were discussing that years ago, Wanda Wheeler was like, who approved that? And why is it that way? And we had pictures. So I'm just curious in this development where they would go.
There would have to be utility boxes for connections to when they pop up above ground. and
Yeah.
then for distribution. We don't know that at this time. They're not coming forward to develop each individual lot. So they're
Okay.
just running sort of, you can think of it as the backbone infrastructure, the
Right.
basic road and the basic utilities. So
Is
as
there
we,
consideration whether you put them in the front yard or whether you put them in the backyard? Because I just know in the front yard, to me, it's bothersome when you see the kids poking around them. They're just right there by the sidewalk and it's attractive. It's
I would
something.
imagine they're gonna go in the backyard just because I've
Okay.
seen the outlay. You're not
Okay.
even gonna see cars. I mean, this is gonna be a
Good.
beautiful subdivision in my
typically
opinion.
they go in the back, you're talking about more of a subdivision. Typically they go in the backyard today.
Okay,
They don't always. It kind of depends where the utility is.
so it's still up in the air.
I've just struggled a little because some of this development, it's all front yard. You know, it's that it has all fronts around some of these buildings. It's mixed use with commercial and residential, but we
Okay,
can look at that if council desires as we get the
all right.
final development plans in. Also, typically, I mean, these utility companies, we don't necessarily have that much control over that. They provide the public utilities. So,
Okay, well, the discussion on the last time is that there'd been an easement to go ahead and put them in the front because
Yeah.
it was easier, and they could have put them in the back. It's just more cost effective to do it right beside the sidewalk. So,
we can let the
Yeah.
applicant answer, but
Okay.
I'm sure they're going to want to camouflage that stuff as much as possible.
agreed, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Jeannie Ball, 1989 Stratford Road. Just a couple questions. The green lines are roads also, correct? There was discussion of,
The colors don't show up wonderfully on this, Jeannie. The green lines are conservation areas around streams.
oh, okay,
So the black, I'll just get up and point to this. This is the main, here's 23, here's Baker, here's Stratford. So here's the main spine road, here, as the main road.
Yeah.
And then these are the existing creeks and streams that will be protected.
okay,
With a buffer area around them, and the trees preserved. And these are reserve areas here that will have stormwater and some of them.
what I'm concerned about is that curve, you know, at the very top there at Stratford Road. I thought maybe that was going to be straightened out some. Is
It
it
will
still
be.
going to be?
Yes.
Is that green line, that's not a road. At one time, we talked about a road there, and then they said no road there. To the right of the pond.
Oh, that's showing you the tree conservation area around that, the
So
forest
that's
there.
not a road, okay.
Yeah, that's not.
Do we know how much the road's going to be straightened out?
Back to here and you can see, this is the plan, which is what you've seen before, what council approved. I'd turn the orientation on you, 23 is at the top now.
Uh-huh. It doesn't look like it's straightened out. It looks like it's just the same, pretty much the same as it is.
They were taking a little bit of the curve of it out. Bill, I don't know if you want to address that in more technical detail. There's a set of engineering drawings that's pretty thick.
He doesn't want to address it. No, I didn't hear what he said. The only reason I'm asking, our neighbor that lives on that curve asked me to see, they have a mailbox on the other side of the street, on the Coghlan Crossing Street. And they know that's going to have to be moved
To their side of the street.
to their side of the road. And they just wondered, you know, how much of that curve's going to be gone or how much more land they might be getting. And
I'm sure we can provide you or the neighbor the engineering set when it's in its final form and they can see.
okay. And then the only other thing was the trees. I think I saw in some of the rhetoric where it was talking about either in lieu of money or in lieu of extra trees, it was money to the city. And I think a lot of us would like to see more trees and bigger diameter trees. So I'm just putting that bit in for.
But the zoning text, as you know, requires a lot of trees to be replanted on the site, a lot of trees to be permanently preserved, but also allow trees to come out to make the development. And so essentially the difference can be made up with a payment in lieu of planting under our current ordinance and their zoning text. And that they've agreed to, and that provides a schedule of that, or they can always plant as well. I think some of what they're working on now is working with the Historical Society to do some planting there. It's very proximate to this site, and we certainly could give them credit for, you know, any plantings of, you know, required trees or at least meeting minimum specifications for trees over there. In terms of planting bigger trees, I definitely understand that. There are certain sizes of trees required along the buffer strips and that sort of thing, and they'll plant at least the minimum. But Ted is here, he can correct me if I'm wrong, but one thing I've learned over the years I've been here from our arborists is that if you plant closer to our minimum caliper size tree, which is 1 3/4 to 2 inch trees, they actually are healthier, take better, and grow faster than if you were to plant a bigger tree initially. So that's just one thing I've learned over the years. So.
Okay. All right. That's it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good comments.
Thank you very much. Yes, ma'am.
Barbara Martin, 1901 Stratford Road. There's a lot of parking area here, a lot of asphalt, and I wondered, is this going to be a permeable asphalt so that the runoff, I know you've got drains and things that'll go into basins, but if it were permeable asphalt, not as much would end up in the river or in the basins and possibly overflow.
The answer is it's not required to be, but
not.
it could be if that's what they want to do. I think the plan right now is for it not to be that.
Well, it's a thought for the council to consider because that is a lot of asphalt, and if there's a lot of rain coming down all at once, it's going to really, even though there are basins, it's going to come down pretty fast and furious at times, and we don't want it to be just running into the river. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Does the applicant want to say anything? Sure. She was over there, top of that, I could tell.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I'll start at the very beginning.
Name and address.
Connie Klima, that's a good place to start. Connie Klima, P.O. Box 991, Pataskla, Ohio. In regard to the grass, I did hire somebody to mow, but obviously he has not mowed. So I don't like high grass either, and the higher it gets, the worse it is to cut. So we had somebody on that separate from the big mowers, and obviously we'll have to follow through with that. But I was assured it would be mowed last week, so I appreciate it. Well, just call me. On the curve area, we have reviewed those plans at the Historic Society when we have our public meeting with our neighbors. That curve, Jeannie, will be coming out, and we even talked to the people who purchased the property there on the outside of the curve, letting them know that the road would be farther away from their front now, which is why I think the question of where to place a mailbox or whatever will be there. So they can get that information, as Dave said. In regard to trees, because of your tree statute, we not only will be paying some money, of course, in helping with society, but we're going to plant as many of those trees as we can on our own site because we want our site to be as pretty as possible. So we're very excited about the fact that we will be able to do that and not just be giving away money to all the other sites. So we'll be working on that. And in regard to the surfaces, we have storm plans, of course, have to accommodate our surfaces as they are so that we do not have flooding. And our storm sewer plan does that. Areas that we can do more green or permeable, impervious surfaces, we will. But presently on our infrastructure as proposed, as Dave said, we're putting in streets and infrastructure that will, of course, not have that type of a surface. Will be hard surfaces, roads, that type of thing, public roads. So.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the public that would like to come forward at this time? Okay, we'll close the public hearing. And what is the wish of council?
Make a motion to suspend the rules requiring 3 readings on ordinance 1733.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Hellinger, a second by Mr. Browning. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
Move to approve ordinance 1733.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Hellinger, a second by Mr. Browning. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr? Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes, motion carries.
And make a move to suspend the rules requiring 3 readings on ordinance 1734.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Hellinger, second by Mr.
You can go, call me Brown.
Yeah, really. Mr. Browning. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
Move to approve ordinance 1734.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Hellinger, second by Mr. Browning. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
Move to suspend the rules requiring 3 readings on ordinance 1735.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Hellinger, second by Mr. Browning. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
Move to approve ordinance 1735.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Hellinger, second by Mr. Browning. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes, motion carries. Good luck. Thank you so much. At this time, we'll move on to item 15, which is the 5th reading of Resolution 17-20. Elaine, if you'll please finish reading that.
Resolution number 17-20, a resolution accepting the City of Delaware's Bike Master Plan 2025.
Thank you. Mr. Miller, do you want to start?
I just wanted to bring up a few points. We looked at, based on the comments we received, we looked at several things and include them in your packet. But one of the things that really influences a bike plan is the safety. And safety is a major concern in any project we do. So we always want to consider those safety factors. And one of the reasons the Delaware Run project was included is it eliminates some intersections down through there. The other thing I wanted to talk about was greenways, just greenways in general. We have we don't have many greenways at all in Delaware. And I know on this topic, we focus primarily on the Delaware Run area from Houck Road to Blue Limestone Park. But the plan is a little more comprehensive than that, and looking at a larger area that this would probably encompass. One of the things I looked at was this probably would go from Blue Limestone to Gallant Woods, which is about 4.5 miles. It's about 2 miles outside, following Delaware Run, and it's about 2 miles outside the city corporation limits. So in the bigger picture, that is this Houck Road to Blue Limestone Park is a small segment of that area. And a segmented green space is not as healthy as a connected green space that is longer, and where there's more of a corridor that animals can travel, wildlife can travel. And also this greenways are a lot more accepted than a street path, a path that goes parallel with the street. It's just not as exciting, and greenways seem to be more of a accepted and benefit to the community. So that is something that we want to establish more of in Delaware and look at more greenways. And also as greenways develop, they become more and more transportation corridors. And this area out following this tributary could become a huge transportation corridor to the downtown area, to the recreation centers, and in those areas. So kind of wanted to touch on those and just kind of, I guess, look at more of the bigger picture of this whole plan, this comprehensive plan. And again, once we decide we're going to move forward with one of these projects, there's going to be a whole nother process of the public input stages and working through alternatives of that. But right now we're looking a little more wide and citywide and comprehensive. So I'll answer any questions if you have any. Or
I think it maybe also would be helpful if Ted can provide just an overview of some of the changes that we're recommending to the plan based upon the public input that's been received over the last 4 meetings. And just to kind of review those, because if you do choose to adopt the plan, we're talking about just some changes in terms of some of the priority projects and whatnot. And I think it would be helpful for council and for the public to know what those are.
So we received a lot of public input regarding the Bruce Road path. I think you all witnessed that. The other thing when looking at that is it becomes a major safety concern. A lot of the people that would typically use the Bruce Road path are funneling out onto 23 and down using that route. And so as a major safety concern, that we took a different perspective in rating that pathway. And safety is, again, a large concern of ours. So looking at that, and then also the public comment phase, that plan, we recommend moving that up into I think it was 10th on the list in there. Some of the other changes we looked at was just so we reinforce the flexibility of the plan that we're looking for. There's going to be opportunities that come up over time that, this plan is going to, it may be developer driven or something where, 80% of the pathway is going to be built. So there's an opportunity there for the city to fill in that 20% and to complete one of the pathways. So want to have that flexibility and to jump to number 25 if need be, and if desired, that we have that flexibility to do that. We're not going to follow this plan number 1, 2, 3 all the way down through there. We want some of that flexibility built into it so that we can, if opportunities arise, that we can work towards completing the plan, overall plan, if a financial or situation presents itself. Those are some of the big changes that we are looking at. I think we went through and just redlined. I think another big change is the title. I agree with that comment. I think it was Councilwoman Keller mentioned it. It is more than a bike plan. It's an active transportation plan where walking, biking, rollerblading is the appropriate. So looking at doing a bike and pedestrian master plan, calling it that.
We also included in your packet additional background information from Ted And some of that includes comments from the police chief regarding the issue of safety, whether it's the Delaware Run bike path that has been talked about or other projects in general. And in the comments in the memorandum that Ted provided, there is considerable discussion in there from the chief, and I would ask if the chief could come up and just kind of address that generally. This has been a concern raised by a number of the residents at Delaware Run. I was out there last week at the pathway. I walked it with Executive Director Larry Harris and Ted Miller from one end to the other and talked about some of those concerns. And we would be more than willing to provide additional information to the residents at Willowbrook or any of our assisted living facilities with respect to safety issues, because we take that very seriously. And so if that's okay, I think it would be helpful for the chief to maybe kind of address this broadly speaking with respect to bike paths, and in particular, if we extend the pathway at Delaware Run.
Madam Mayor, members of council, and members of the public, what I did was took a look at any crime related to our bike path network within the city of Delaware. It's not quite as easy as pulling up a query because we don't have addresses on the bike path, so doing a common word search with our dispatch system. So we are dispatched by Delaware County Emergency Communications, and over a 5-year period found that we have had about 251 calls for service to the bike paths within the city. So that could be anything. And out of that, about 44 of those resulted in reports. If you do the same type of query in our system where we take our reports, I found about 100 reports that just have the words bike path in the report. So it's really not exact. So I put both those facts in the statement, but it shows, on a worst case basis, we took 100 reports over that, from 2012 to current. And the reports, we look at what's going to happen in the future based on history. And those bike paths really haven't proven to be a manpower drain. They have proven to be really problematic for us. The other thing I included in that report is what really drives crime, and it's people will commit crime. No matter what you do, no matter what you build, no matter how you build it, people are going to try and commit crime. If that wasn't the case, so what we try and do is build things intelligently, and when we go in places and we do assessments and we work with businesses and schools and churches, and we try to help people be smart about protecting themselves, locking their doors, keeping clear views, maybe keeping some lights on. So we do those things, but also in looking at just what a criminal will do when they're trying to commit a crime, you have to understand that they also feel anxiety. And so if they're going to commit a crime, they're going to do it the easiest way possible. So if you look at the current path that is already constructed at Willowbrook, it leads directly to Valley Side Drive. It leads directly out to 36. And we can look at the history on that path, and there's really nothing going on there right now. The path is there. It's not connected directly to Blue Limestone and not connected directly out to Houck, but there is an informal series of trails back there through that wooded area. So just what we're seeing back there now doesn't cause me any concern about what's going to happen in the future if it's actually formally built out. What I can tell you is when I went back there to check it out, when I pulled in, I saw 4 or 5 runners cut across and run down that trail. And so really it's how you view it and how you build it and what kind of people are going to be there. So, if it's built and the bikers bike on it and the runners run on it and the parents are with their kids on it, you're really increasing eyes and ears at the back of the property there. It really is a force multiplier for us because there's more people in a more secluded area that can actually see things going on for us. And there's things you can do with intelligent design to actually make that a destination if we want. I would suggest we work with Willowbrook and we talk about how we build that area to make it a positive experience for Willowbrook and also make it a destination for the kind of quality coming in and out of the trails. Some of the studies I've looked at, they've built community gardens and let the residents, use those, have access and plant those community gardens. And then you have people that want to come down the trail to see them. And then you have residents that are invested in the trail, and you have those folks interacting, and it's a positive experience.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, Chief? Okay, thank you.
The other comment I guess I wanted to make, if Dave, you could put the image up that shows this is particular with respect to the Delaware Run Trail, Delaware Run path. Again, I think we should view it more as a linear park than a simple bike path or pedestrian path. But the history of this goes back several years and was in the previous bike path plan. It shows up in the comprehensive plan. And this council, previous councils, previous planning commissions have required of developers, like we did with Willowbrook, that they dedicate property to the city easements for bike path. And we recognize that there are a number of people out there tonight, some of whom we haven't got any property for because we don't have a project at this point. But I just want to let you know that the map that you're looking at here identifies property, the Hidden Valley Golf Course, the Blue Limestone Park, where part of the path would go. Then we have private property owners, and when and if the project moves ahead, we would have to talk to those property owners and figure out if that's possible. If it's not, then you're at an impasse. But the properties in yellow are properties that the city owns. The Chatham Glen Landing, the Chatham Landing project, all those little condominiums, all of that property behind there is owned by the city. And then the property farther to the west, CVS deeded to the city as well, as part of our planning for this sometime in the future of this project. So that's really just gives you kind of an overview of the planning that's gone into this, whether it is, as the mayor has pointed out, we don't have any funding for this project. It could be years before it takes place. The last plan was adopted almost 10 years ago, and not a lot has happened between now and then and now. The other point I wanted to raise was just to remark on a couple of comments that were posted on the Sustainable Delaware email distribution, which I'm part of, with respect to comments about the city possibly having plans to develop the golf course and rechannelize this stream. And I can state unequivocally that's just not the case. We have no plans to sell that golf course, to develop that golf course, to develop the plan, to develop that land around Chatham Glen. That was not why we proposed the Valley Side Drive project. We proposed the Valley Side Drive transportation project for transportation. It wasn't to open up to development. And this is not to open up the golf course to development. It's just not the case. And we're looking at a linear park that would go through the city at some point in the future, possibly. Obviously, it takes a lot of pieces to make that work, and the first of which is to keep it in the plan, and that's all you're doing tonight, would be to keep this project in our comprehensive plan in place. But there's no ulterior motives here to try to get development to come into Delaware and buy our golf course or build more homes on city property or west of the golf course. It's just not the case. So I wanted to set the record straight on that because I've seen some emails about it, and I know there's just a lot of speculation about what are the motives here. The motives are just, it's a linear park. If you haven't had a chance to go down and experience that trail, you should. Because it's really a very, very special place. And I can understand the residents who live down there being attached to it and being concerned about more people down there. But I think it could be beneficial to the community. But we're a long way from getting to the point of planning a project at this point. But it has a tremendous amount of potential for this community in the long run. And that's kind of what we're looking at with respect to developing a plan. So that's an overview of some of the changes that were made. Bruce Road got moved up because there was a lot of comment about that. That was helpful. Again, we don't have any money for Bruce Road project like a lot of these projects, but just recognizing that there's support for that's very helpful, I think, for the council moving ahead. So And we wanted to try to address the concerns with respect to safety. And we can follow that up with the conversations at Willowbrook if they desire. So that's pretty much what we have in terms of changes, and we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Holman, when was this, the Willowbrook bike path, this entire extension, when was it first reflected in a plan? Do you have an estimate of the year? How far
It's-
we're going back?
To early 2000s, and if not previous to that, I mean,
I'm
I'd
just
say
looking for an
I'd
age, I
say
won't quote you on that.
early 2000s. It's in the current bike path plan. I think there's reference to it in the comprehensive land use plan, which was. Yeah, and I believe there's a reference to it in the comprehensive land use plan, which was adopted in 2003. And I think at the time that the city required Chatham Landing, the developers there, to deed that property to the city was because of the fact that the run goes through that property and that someday that might connect.
And so was that the reason why the Willowbrook Trail that's in existence today was, I mean, that was envisioned at some point to
Absolutely.
connect?
Yeah.
So it wasn't ever intended to be kind of an island of a trail?
No, not at all. I think the whole point was that if Willowbrook was going to develop, we weren't going to oppose that. We were going to support that. But we said at the same time, we have a plan that shows some sort of a multi-use path along here. And you need to contribute to that, just like Connie Clemens' project is contributing to a bike path plan on her property that will someday connect, hopefully, south down to the Olentangy Trail in north. So it wasn't just an isolated piece. It was part of a larger system.
I wasn't on council when the Willowbrook development was approved, but was there a mass outcry at that time regarding this path in the natural area or regarding the actual Willowbrook complex being built on top of this giant natural area? Was there a lot of public comment back then about that?
I don't recall a lot of opposition to the Willowbrook project. Willowbrook has a very good track record. They did a very nice project in the southern part of the city. They did their due diligence. Mr. Harris was very fastidious about the amount of trees that he was going to replace with trees that came down. There was concern on Willowbrook's part about reluctance about building the trail, but ultimately they in the city came to an agreement on that pathway. It got built, and now it's part of their complex and part of the city's trail network. But no, not any public opposition on Willowbrook per se, no.
I don't know if any other council members have had the chance to go down there and take a walk. It's absolutely gorgeous. Probably, I mean, I've walked preservation parks all over Delaware County, and I don't know that I found a place that is that beautiful. There were cardinals and bluebirds and a snake, which I didn't handle very well, but it did not hurt me. It's a beautiful area.
It did not hurt me.
It did not hurt me. I was afraid that it was going to, and we had a moment of standoff, but it's really pretty.
Any other questions or comments?
There's a couple comments. One, I thought Ted's letter was very helpful and informative and got to a lot of the things that were brought up here, so I really appreciate them trying to do that. Just the other thing is to keep in mind, as Ted mentioned, that this is a plan with a lot of flexibility built in. Even though we don't have funding to do these things, the point is we can move things around, and with each and every one of these plans, when it comes time for engineering and construction, there's going to be a process for public comment again. So the fact that we're starting with this plan today doesn't mean this is exactly how it's going to end up. It's a plan, and I think we've done everything we can to accommodate flexibility.
Okay, this is the fifth reading. What is the wish of council?
Make a motion to approve resolution 1720.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Hellinger, a second by Mr. Schaefer. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rourke?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes. Motion carries. And again, this is just a plan. It's not set in stone, and we do not have the money to build it tomorrow, nor the next day.
I'm quite new to this. This is actually my first one I've ever visited.
So if you'd like to come forward to the microphone and give us your name and address.
So I'm Peggy Lewis. But I don't live here in town. My name's
What's your name?
Angie Clark, and I actually live at,
Address? I'm sorry, for the record, we need this information.
okay, Raymond, Ohio, 22218 Johnson Road. Okay, but my grandmother's property is 3910 Marysville Road. Okay, I was told not to get personal or anything here, but I do have a couple questions. As like I said, I'm new to this, and I live in the country. So at any time, I can't just walk over to my neighbor's house and start going through his backyard, going through his stuff, because that's considered trespassing. So I guess my question is, we had 5 generations that's lived on that property, been to the property, et cetera, et cetera. My grandma worked very hard to keep that property from the things you just said. My grandmother fed the deers. My grandmother fed the raccoons, the birds, all the above. My grandmother kept her property up so that you did see that natural, beautiful thing that you see. And anybody in here who's neighbors with my grandmother knows that woman was out there even when she was ready to pass away, going through that field, feeding those birds, feeding those deer. It didn't make a difference. My problem is I'm going to have my grandkids and my great-grandkids on that property with bike paths and all the above. I live in Marysville. There is crime on those bike paths. There's drug dealing going on those bike paths. But my grandkids are going to be out there. I mean, if it was your guys' property and your kids and your family that was walking, letting these people walk through these bike paths, and it affected your kids and your grandkids, would you be, like I think somebody said back there, the police officer or whatever, there's only 100 reports. Okay, what if it's your grandkids or it's your property or your family that's being affected by that? These are people that have struggled to keep this property. My grandmother worked numerous jobs till she was almost 80 to keep this property. And you guys could just come in. I mean, I can't go to my neighbor's house tomorrow and go, hey, you know what? I think I want to put a bike path through there. And my fact, I want to put a stream to run on my property. So please explain to me, because I am really ignorant to the laws and everything, how it is that somebody can come in and take part of your property that you paid for, that you worked for.
Well, we're not. First of all, we just
So
adopted.
you guys are going to buy it and you're going to pay the taxes on it.
Probably the thing to do is to have a side discussion with you, perhaps to talk about the property that you're referencing. But all the city council did tonight was adopt a plan which shows over 100 projects, some of which require right-of-way from private property owners. And if we get to the point where we're looking at advancing a project, we have to negotiate with a private property owner. We're doing that right now for a sidewalk we're putting along West Central Avenue in front of the Old Smith Clinic. We're negotiating with the property owners right now. And hopefully they'll be cooperative and they'll negotiate with us and we'll be able to obtain the
So
property.
if they don't cooperate, what happens?
Then we have to sit down with city council and decide what our options are at that point. But right now, tonight, there's no action to take
No, I'm
anybody's.
just saying, as a family.
Right, no, we understand that. That's why I think we put references in the plan to being careful when it comes to acquiring property from private property owners. But all we did tonight was adopt a plan. We're not advancing the Delaware Run bike path. And if and when we get to that point of advancing that plan, we would have to notify all the property owners, talk to them about it, just as if we were buying a property for a road or any other kind of public improvement. So I'd be happy, if you can leave your email or phone number, I'd be happy to follow up with you tomorrow, because we've identified all the property owners that are in here. I don't know which one is your mother's property. If it's Hunter, there's a number here.
Marysville Road.
No, the name that the property is in, because we
Oh,
listed.
Beverly Hall.
Okay. But I'd be happy to do that. But
I
there's,
understand people like writing all the above. What I'm saying is it's affecting a lot more than just
yeah,
what he
And
said.
we're sensitive to that. So I'd be happy to just please leave your phone number with
Oh,
the
I
clerk
will.
and we'll call you.
Thank you. Yes.
Susan McGrail, 268 Sylvan Drive. I did have a question regarding the Speedway bike path, that they did put a bike path in the Speedway plan. Will that come into this actual plan in one of those stages?
Yes.
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 It will come into there in the stage. We just don't have.
I'm okay with that, yeah. I just thought this would be an excellent way to pull that through, take it on, and it would also give us a way to get out if we need to, because it could, I mean, it would be a safety issue. But I will say one thing quickly, is that I have property in Athens, and in today's society, even though mine is a wildlife refuge and it's secluded, I've had more issues with break-ins and theft and crime. And what I've allowed is people to be on my property that I haven't before. And I've allowed them to walk through and check it and be through, and I have no more problems with those issues. So on one hand, I understand what they're saying about easements, protection, and their wildlife, but I think also a bike path, for what you are saying, allows for travel, communication, connection, and visibility and community to interact, which creates a safer environment. Not necessarily the movement will keep down those calls for other issues. If it isn't used or it isn't connected properly, that would be a problem. But I think this is a very good way to start. But I do understand her feeling about it. But I have found on my property, by allowing it to open up, I'm not missing chainsaws or having a window broken and stuff taken. It has actually decreased significantly by allowing traffic on it.
Well, good. Thank you very much.
Nice.
I think there was one more over here that raised their hand at one point. Okay. Oh, did you have something, sir?
Sure. Just briefly, I've heard all the discussions, but
Okay, when you sit down and
Yeah,
give your
sure.
name and address for the record.
yeah, Wendell Patton, 86 Delaware Crossing, East. Okay, this bike path is different from other bike paths in a bunch of ways. It's a lot longer and harder to get to than the path along William Street. And seems unlikely as a regular biker myself that I would ever go that way to get from point A to point B when you can go down William Street, which is, so I don't see it used for transportation. It's the most secluded of any city, would be the most secluded of any city bike path. And we worry about city access for security and sweeping and snow blowing. I mean, just driving from Mingo down to the university, I had to have a little broom in on my bike so that I could sweep the broken glass off. I mean, the city came through once every couple of weeks. And this path is so much more inaccessible. I don't see how the city is ever going to get to it. I mean, the only accessibility is on Houck Road. I mean, excuse me, is on the golf course. Houck Road, I can't see how anybody can ever access anything from Houck Road because it's down in that narrow valley there. So this is a sort of a different kind of deal. That the necessary functions of snow plowing and sweeping and security are going to be hard for the city to maintain. And then lastly, the nature thing. Although degraded, this section of Delaware Run does provide wildlife habitat within the city limits. There are 151 species of birds that have been found by people at Ohio Wesleyan, and fox, squirrels, and deer, which are rare inside the city, are commonly seen. And the big thing about being on a floodplain is the flood spreads gravel and debris over the area several times a year. We just look out our back window at Willowbrook and see the gravel, and then Willowbrook comes and cleans it off. The most abundant tree down there is a locust tree with long thorns, and these thorns are dropping off. People at Willowbrook have gone on little bike trips and have gotten flat tires immediately. So the channelization of the run and the extensive tree removal necessary to make this a functioning bike path would make the area into another blue limestone rather than a remnant of the more natural world which you enjoy. I think if the channelization and tree removal happened, it wouldn't be the beautiful place that you walk by, because it couldn't be and still be a bike path.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on to item 18. You have petitions? I do. You can just turn them into the clerk. Yes.
17.
Did we do 17? We did 17.
Right. I'm Brian Horner. The address I'm talking about is 1706. I'm from Marysville, Ohio, 431. My question is why can't you just run it along the street? I'm parallel to it.
We've had this discussion for 5 meetings now, so it's been going on for 2.5 months. Not that you, nothing against you because you weren't here. We have talked about the safety of cars, or cars with children, people trying to bike. We do not feel it's the safest way to go along the freeways, the highways there. That's why we want to bike.
So why
path.
wouldn't you lower the speed limit and that also help out the,
It's a state highway.
okay, it's lowered through town, ain't it?
Yes, it is.
So why, if this is considered town and you could take the property, why can't you slow it down there?
Nothing, we've had this discussion over and over, what would be
Well,
the safest?
You said it's safe, right? Is it safe? I work at Allcrane, right up there in Clintonville. Every one of their roads has a bike path on it, and we have to obey the traffic to the bikers. I drive a 13-speed truck, and I've got to follow beside a slow biker and shift every gear to get through. And I deal with them. So now, wouldn't it be cheaper on all the residents of Delaware to run it along the side of the road or put a sidewalk or a path beside it instead of running it through the back property that you can't maintain? You don't have all the eyes on it because it's all wooded. And you can take and keep better maintaining of it, just like a sidewalk. That's why I was just wondering.
Well, one problem is if you're I'm sorry, I just want to elaborate on what the mayor said. I know that we've had a lot of discussion about this. This is not a substitute for the on-street pathway system that we already have. We have already done that. And if you take a look at Marysville Road, we have several sections of bike path that we've required developers to do. We've done some. Hopefully someday that will be complete as well. This is not, one is not a substitute for the other.
Okay.
And so we recognize that, and they have different purposes. So that's really the essence of trying to get to what you're asking. It's not a substitute at all.
All right. Now, another question is everybody said they walked that property line. Did you guys get permission from the property owners, or did you just trespass?
So there's confusion.
Walk
Yeah,
bike
there's-
path is what she
Yeah,
said.
we walk the path that's on Willowbrook's property, which has an easement to the city from one end to the other, but we didn't go farther east or west.
I know we've got a bunch of people walking down through their littering and everything else, and that was a big
There's an
issue.
informal pass system back there now. It's been there for years. And
Yeah,
just
we've
like,
been there since 52, so yeah.
okay,
Okay, that's all I have.
okay,
Thank you.
thanks.
Excuse me, sir. Can you just repeat your address? I'm sorry.
431 West Street, Marysville, Ohio.
West 8th? Thank you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, if you want.
Okay, do we want to take a vote on 17, or do you want another reading? That's the resolution 17-33.
Yeah, we discussed that, right? I thought we were taking that to another.
We discussed it tonight, but we didn't take a vote on it.
Do you want to take a vote? That's what I'm asking. It's a resolution.
We have to come back with a supplemental appropriations. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Because we still have to come back to you with ordinance
Right.
language regarding supplementals to initiate some of these projects that we talked about.
Is there a motion?
Yes, I will make a motion for approval of resolution 17-33.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Schaefer, a second by Mr. Hellinger. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes, motion carries. Item 18. You'll please read this on the record?
Ordinance number 17-37, An ordinance amending the 2017 appropriations ordinance to provide funding for professional services to complete an update to the city's current comprehensive plan.
Mr. Atwood?
Mayor, members of council, this is, as the clerk just read, a supplemental appropriation to go into a process that would be a request for proposal and vetting responses, obviously, to start the major rewrite process of our city's comprehensive plan. This supplemental, if you would approve it, would authorize $175,000 toward that effort. So we're happy to answer any questions that you might have.
This is a first reading tonight. We take this to another reading, but this really just follows on previous conversations. City Council, the late Councilman DeGenova had talked extensively about updating the comprehensive plan. It hasn't been updated since 2003. It's really the blueprint of how we grow and develop, and this is an opportunity to update it. And it's it'll be a very a process that will involve the community. It'll probably take 18 to 24 months to do, and Mr. Stelzer has identified some funding for that. But this is a first reading tonight.
Okay, any questions? Okay. Let's move on to item 19, which is Finance Director's Report.
Thank you, Mayor. My report through the month of April is included in your packet. I think of note is that our tax collections did kind of come back a little bit, but most of that's due to business income tax. Withholding taxes are still a little bit down, so we'll keep monitoring that. But other than that, development revenues are not quite at 2017 levels. So we try to watch those too. But most of those revenue sources are tied to capital improvement plan projects or future projects. But other than that, I'd entertain any questions you may have.
Any questions? Okay. City Manager's Report.
Yeah, real quickly, I was not able to get to the Arts Festival this weekend, but the reports I got were very positive. We had a lot of dialogue with the Arts Festival organizers, our police department, our planning department, our public works department. My thanks to all of that effort to keep things running smoothly. Last year, recall there were some issues that came up. We didn't have any of those this year, so that's good. The pool opens next Saturday, as does the spray and play out at Houck Road, so hopefully the weather will cooperate. We have an age-friendly initiative discussion going on with the Delaware Health Department and Source Point. Vice Mayor Schaefer had asked that we look into that. This is an initiative that Columbus has undertaken with their health department, so that's underway. The New Moon Half and Quarter Marathon goes off on Saturday of this week, so that'll be exciting. And we are doing a organizational culture survey of all of our employees over the next couple of weeks. So I'll be putting something in our bi-weekly report about that later this week. So that's what I have.
Okay. Council comments. We'll start with Mr. Schaefer.
Thank you. I know we've had a little discussion about this, but I'd like to see what we can do to move the discussion forward on the designated outdoor refreshment area. Find out what it is we need to do, how quickly we can move on doing that, see if we can have the opportunity to make that happen before summer's out. I've talked to a lot of our business people and downtown people who have been downtown doing business, and there seems to be a lot of support for that type of thing. I think we can even more enhance our downtown areas. We can have some events like First Friday, the Arts Fest, et cetera. So what do we need to do to get that going, and how can we activate?
Yeah, actually, it'll be ultimately council will have to authorize me to file an application, but we'll provide the background information with that. Worthington recently went through this in the city of Middletown, so we have some examples out there of how it's done, and we'll get that information to you and get it initiated.
What does that mean?
It means you establish a district within the downtown where alcohol could be taken in a cup, I believe, from one location to another. And it really just
doesn't violate open container laws in that one particular area, kind of like Bourbon Street and French Quarter.
Some cities have done it to just is a part of a revitalization effort.
I thought we didn't qualify for that for some reason.
We didn't, but there was a deadline. Now we do, because it It didn't, in fact, and I think it's this year sometime, I think April actually is when they phased in the time. So our size city now, if it's not right now, it's very, very soon we'll qualify, but we didn't qualify last year when council asked about it.
Okay. So can you get us the information before next meeting that we?
I've already written up
You've got it? Okay.
the process and what we need to do. There's some steps and there's some plans that need to be done. I'm gonna go off the top of my head, like safety plans and things like that. And but yeah, I'll redistribute that.
Okay. And possibly have it on the next meeting's agenda then to discuss?
Oh, to discuss? Absolutely. I just don't know. I don't remember what all the pieces are, so I don't want to overpromise. We can definitely have it on the
Thank
material.
you.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hollingham?
I have nothing.
Mr. Rohr? I did that, okay. Do you have anything, Mr. Browning?
Nothing, thank you.
Okay. Mrs. Keller? Nothing. Mr. Jones?
You're doing it on purpose, aren't you?
I just want to mess with you.
Two quick things. Is there any further feedback on the JED talk with
No, we haven't heard back. I think I updated you my last bi-weekly report. In discussion with Mr. George, he was going to get with the Mr. Holtree, the trustee chairman, and then, but I have not heard back.
All right. Just a quick question for Ted. I've been out of the room, Ted, with my group at St. Mary's. Have you heard from me about our mud run? Have not. All right, thanks. That's it, Mayor.
No.
Okay. With that, I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We're adjourned 8:26.
Here.